Hey everyone, it's Alexander Robinson. Welcome to the channel, and this is my review for The Flash, the latest entry in the DC Extended Universe following everyone's favorite speedster, at least the most famous of all comic book speedsters. The movie takes place sometime after the events of Justice League, when they don't really establish, but since the series is near death, I don't think it really matters. Anyway, Barry Allen is called in to basically be the team's cleanup guy. In the opening of the movie, he helps out Batman with some criminals, and then he goes back to his regular life, trying to help his dad get out of prison by basically clearing that he didn't murder Barry's mother. However, Barry soon discovers that he has the ability to travel through time. So with this newfound power, he goes back to the point where his mother was still alive and fixes that moment in time to where she can stay alive in his life. Unfortunately, this causes a mesh-up in several universes that results in the return of General Zod, a world with no metahumans, and a different-looking Batman altogether. When it comes to the big DC heroes, The Flash was always a character that stuck out to me more than the others, mainly because of the Justice League animated series where all the characters seemed to be serious except for the Flash, who was more the comic relief. So I was always curious to see how a live-action Flash movie would end up being, or at least a live-action adaptation, only to find out that the Flash that I enjoyed growing up was Wally West. The main Flash is Barry Allen, and with Ezra Miller in Justice League, both cuts, I initially liked their performance as the Flash, but over time they just started to get on my nerve. Even with the Snyder Cut, which had Barry Allen be more of a toned-down version of what he was in the theatrical cut, I just found Ezra Miller's performance to be not ideal. And then, of course, I have to address the elephant in the room, how they've been going on a crime spree for the past year. So that just hurt the film's reputation or any excitement I had for The Flash. But people who'd seen the movie ahead of time, whether it was test screenings, the CinemaCon screening, or just press screenings in general, swear up and down that it's one of the greatest superhero movies ever made. Like, oh my god, it will blow your mind. It rivals The Dark Knight. And I want to know what version of that movie these people were watching, because what I saw was not even close. It's more in the lower half of average comic book movies, because this is a mess. It's not a complete disaster in the sense that it's incomprehensible, it's confusing, because time travel is mostly a confusing concept, but if you apply certain rules to it and follow them, then you'll get a lot out of it, like Back to the Future or Avengers Endgame. Something like Bill and Ted or Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah can get confusing because they don't follow any rules. So this movie is a little easier to follow when it comes to its time travel element, but I just didn't see a reason to care. Maybe this isn't fair to the movie, because when it was being made at a point when they were still trying to keep the DCEU alive. Now that we know that this universe is going to die and get a full reset in a couple of years, I didn't see a reason to care about what was going on, because the story itself had the potential to be heartfelt. It had several opportunities to be emotionally powerful, and for some people it supposedly worked, but for me, I just felt nothing. And part of the fact had to do with Ezra Miller. It's really difficult to look at this movie and think about all the shenanigans and crimes that they've committed, but I'm going to try my best to put it aside. Ezra Miller just never really works for me as Barry Allen. And in this film, they have to play two different versions of Barry Allen. The younger one, who has yet to get his powers, who's a little more obnoxious, and the older one, who's more seasoned and is aware of how these rules work. And there's a couple of moments between the two Barrys that admittedly made me chuckle, but I wouldn't say anything in this movie is worthy of a laugh out loud moment. And there is a good moment at the end of the movie between Barry and his mother that, had this movie come out much sooner, probably would have worked for me. And it's definitely the most emotional part of the movie. It's just the rest of the movie for me did not work out, because a lot of the time the movie seems to be more focused on callbacks and nostalgia baiting. Now in the beginning of the movie we do get Ben Affleck coming back one more time as Bruce Wayne, and it was cool to see this version of Batman one last time, but the one thing that everyone was talking about with this movie was Michael Keaton's return as Batman from the Tim Burton movies. And it got to a point where Michael Keaton overshadowed The Flash. It seems like the number one thing that everyone was talking about when it came to their excitement for this movie was Michael Keaton as Batman. And yeah, Michael Keaton is the best part about this movie. He's always been my favorite Batman, even if The Dark Knight is my favorite Batman movie, and he slips naturally right back into this role. The costume looks great. The fight sequences are a lot more dynamic and cooler than the ones in the Burton movies, which that's a result of more comic book movies coming out then and an advancement in technology. So it makes more sense for these Batman fight scenes to be cooler than they were back in 1989. So it was cool to see him in this movie. However, there were a few callbacks that really didn't work. If you've seen the trailer, then you know that he quotes a line from the 1989 film, "You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts." And within the context of The Flash, it's awkward and it feels completely out of place. In addition to both The Flash and Batman, we also have Supergirl, played by Sasha Calle, in her feature film debut, and I really feel bad for this actress because Supergirl doesn't really have much of a purpose in this movie. She's only there to be the muscle to fight General Zod in this new universe. And she doesn't really do much beyond that. There's not a lot of depth to her character. I thought the actress did a really good job with the little time that she had, and I hope that she gets to play Supergirl in the Woman of Tomorrow movie that's being planned. Because I think if she was given another and honestly more fair chance to play this character, then she could do some good. I really tried hard to think about things that I legitimately liked about this movie beyond Michael Keaton's return, and there isn't much. One of the worst aspects about this movie is something that the DC Extended Universe still can never get right: the CGI. The CGI is absolute garbage, and it may in fact be worse than in the theatrical cut to Justice League. And I know the director of this movie has said, well, the CGI is supposed to be bad on purpose, which during the Speed Force scenes, sure, I can let that slide, kind of, but everywhere else in the movie, I don't buy it. I do not buy it at all. And this movie, for being delayed as long as it has, and for being a movie that's going to change the face of the DCEU, there's really no excuse for it to visually look this terrible. And then also, I'm tired of nostalgic callbacks. I mentioned the "let's get nuts" line, but there's a sequence at the end of the movie where they just pull out all the stops in terms of callbacks, DC cameos, nostalgia baiting, that got on my nerves and felt really unwarranted. That's ultimately my biggest problem with nostalgia or callbacks in movies. If it feels out of place and not organic within the film's plot or universe, then there's no real reason to have these moments. I think one of the best examples of callbacks in a franchise was with Avengers Endgame. There are several moments throughout the Infinity Saga that are referenced in Avengers Endgame, but they don't feel like callbacks for the sake of referencing something from the past movies. They feel like character moments coming around full circle. They feel earned. There's nothing in this movie in terms of the callbacks and nostalgia baiting that feels earned. Even with Michael Keaton as Batman, because this is in a universe that's just so jumbled and messy, it feels out of place, and there's several emotional moments throughout this movie that feel unearned. I ultimately didn't enjoy it all that much. For as much hype as people were building up with this movie, this let me down tremendously, and once again continues a streak of really mediocre comic book movies this year. I'm going to give this movie 2 ratings. If you've been waiting for this movie for a while, if you've been dying to see a Flash movie, then I say watch at your own risk, because the way the movie looks visually, I just don't think it's worth seeing in a theater. It's just too ugly to experience on a big screen. Seeing it on Max is probably the best possible solution. But if you're not a fan of The Flash or comic book movies in general, there is absolutely no reason to see this movie at all. Outside of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and Across the Spider-Verse, all the superhero movies this year have been average at best. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, Shin Kamen Rider, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, and now The Flash. And this might be the most disappointing, because you had Michael Keaton back as Batman. This probably was the most expensive of the films, and I just felt nothing for it at the end of the day. I'm really looking forward to the DC Extended Universe dying at long last so we can just move on to the new stuff. And there you go, that's my review for The Flash. I hope you enjoyed it. And now want to know what you guys think about the movie. If you've seen it, what did you think? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.